The image is frozen in time. A young man, barely out of his teenage years, with the weight of a world on his shoulders, holds a golden trophy in one hand. But his eyes aren't on the prize. They're searching the chaos of the pitch, a desperate look on his face. Stadium lights glare down on a scene of utter jubilation. Teammates collapsing, flags waving, confetti falling like rain over New York. The victory is historic. He has just defeated the greatest player to ever walk the earth. But he isn't celebrating. He's looking for him. Across the field, the legend stands alone. The cheers of his own fans are a distant hum. For Argentina, the dream is over. Lionel Messi, at 39, has just lost his final World Cup. The cameras zoom in, capturing the raw, unfiltered heartbreak of a man who has given everything. For a moment, the world's greatest player looks as small as the child who first left Argentina decades ago. Then the boy finds the man. Lamine Yamal approaches the Argentine captain. The cameras are on them, capturing this impossible meeting, a passing of the torch written in the stars nearly 2 decades before either of them knew it. But they don't know what is being said. We see Yamal's lips move, hear the roar of the crowd drown out the words, and watch as Messi, broken but dignified, pulls the young man into an embrace. He whispers something in his ear, a final secret, a final piece of advice. It is a moment of silence in the middle of a hurricane. For Lamine Yamal, the World Cup is won. But the quest for the truth of that moment has only just begun. Because tonight, the gold medal around his neck feels as heavy as the words Messi just spoke to him. And the world is left asking, what did he say? On July 19th, 2026, the world witnessed the impossible become reality. It was the first time Lionel Messi and Lamine Yamal had ever faced each other on a football pitch. For 18 years, their lives have been linked by a single, ridiculous photograph. Messi, 20 years old, playfully bathing a 5-month-old baby for a charity calendar. That infant was Yamal. It's a coincidence, so bizarre it feels like a prophecy written by the universe itself. And on that night in the MetLife Stadium, that prophecy was supposed to be a blessing for Messi, a chance to hand over the crown to his heir. Instead, the pupil took the throne. As the final whistle blew, Yamal had won, and Messi was left to grapple with a defeat that shattered the narrative of a perfect ending. The world expected anger. They expected tears. What they didn't expect was the quiet, desperate look of a young man who felt like he had broken something precious. The image of the embrace was beautiful, but was also a lie, because in the moments before that embrace, the World Cup final was not a story of passing torches. It was a war, and Argentina, the defending champions, waged it with everything except the beautiful game that made them great. For over 90 minutes, they didn't have a single shot on goal against Spain. Not one. They committed more fouls in the attacking half than they made passes. The strategy seemed designed to stop Spain by any means necessary, to break the rhythm of a 19-year-old prodigy by any means necessary. But Yamal refused to break. The cameras caught Argentina's defenders targeting him, especially the veteran Nicolas Tagliafico, trying to intimidate the teenager. They shoved him, harassed him, tested the limits of the referee's patience. And each time, Yamal simply got back up. He didn't complain. He didn't retaliate. He didn't give them the satisfaction of a reaction. Against the backdrop of Argentina's unsportsmanlike behavior, including Enzo Fernandez earning a foolish red card and Leandro Paredes grabbing a Spanish player by the throat in the post-match scrum, Lamine Yamal was a monument of composure. And it's this fact that makes Messi's whispered words so devastating. Because when Messi looked across the pitch in that final, he didn't just see a talented kid. He saw everything he was supposed to be and everything he was surrounded by. While his own teammates were losing their heads, Yamal was winning his. While his own players were fighting the referee, Yamal was fighting the game itself. The Argentine captain, who was also caught on camera asking the referee to issue a red card to a Spanish player for the offense of covering his mouth, was forced to witness the starkest possible contrast. He was a man isolated by his own team's ugliness. And Yamal was a boy who refused to be anything other than graceful. So when Yamal approached him on the field, He wasn't just offering consolation to the GOAT. He was offering something far more powerful, a mirror. And the reflection Messi saw in that mirror was the player he could have been on that night, if only those around him had played with the same dignity. The world finally knows what was whispered in that embrace. And the truth is more powerful than anyone expected. In the days following the final, Lamine Yamal broke his silence. Speaking to Spanish outlet Marca, he revealed the words that Lionel Messi had spoken to him on that pitch in New York. Messi told him to keep going my way and that the future belongs to our generation. But here's what makes those words devastating. Yamal didn't just call them kind or encouraging. He said they were worth as much as the gold medal hanging around his neck. In one sentence, the teenager revealed that the blessing of the man he had just defeated carried the same weight as the greatest achievement in world football. Think about what that means. The victory was historic. Yamal had just become the youngest player to win both the European Championship and the World Cup. He had just defeated the GOAT, the man who had held him as a baby in a bathtub nearly 2 decades earlier. And yet, in that moment, Messi's approval was equal to the trophy itself. It was a confession that despite everything he had won, despite every record shattered and every doubt silenced, the validation of his idol still mattered more. He had beaten the king, but he still needed the king's blessing. And Messi, in his defeat, gave it, not with bitterness, not with resentment, but with grace. The passing of the torch wasn't symbolic. It was real, and the world finally knew it. But here is the uncomfortable truth that the cameras refused to capture. The final itself was a tactical disaster for Argentina. For the first 90 minutes, the defending champions failed to register a single shot on goal. Not one. It was the first time in World Cup history that a team had gone an entire regulation final without testing the opposing goalkeeper. Spain dominated possession, controlled the tempo, and suffocated everything Argentina tried to build. And Yamal was the architect of that suffocation. The teenager completed the most dribbles of any player in the entire tournament. 30 successful take-ons. More than Mbappe. More than Vinicius Jr. More than anyone. In the final alone, his stats eclipsed Messi's. 4 shots to Messi's 1. A passing accuracy of 86% to Messi's 77, and 5 successful dribbles to Messi's 3. He didn't score. He didn't assist. But he didn't need to. He had already won the battle before the goal ever came. And Argentina knew it. That's why they targeted him. That's why they fouled him. That's why Tagliafico spent the entire match trying to break the teenager's rhythm. They couldn't stop him through football, so they tried to stop him through fear. The strategy backfired spectacularly. Enzo Fernandez earned a red card in extra time for a reckless foul on Pau Cubarsí, leaving Argentina with 10 men. The South American champions, the team that had scored 19 goals en route to the final, were reduced to desperate fouls and broken tactics. The world expected a classic. What they got was a masterclass in Argentine frustration. And through it all, Yamal remained the calmest player on the pitch. This is the context that makes Messi's whispered blessing so haunting. Because when the Argentine captain looked across the field, he didn't just see a talented kid. He saw the player he used to be, the one who rose above the chaos, who let his feet do the talking, who never let the darkness of the game consume him. Messi, at 39, had just watched his own teammates lose their composure, lose their discipline, and ultimately lose the match. And Yamal? He had never lost his cool, not for a single second. The passing of the torch wasn't just about victory. It was about everything Messi had become surrounded by, and everything Yamal refused to become. But the most damning detail of all emerges from chaos. The world saw Argentina's physicality, their aggression, their complete tactical failure on the biggest stage. But it was what happened after the final whistle that truly exposed the chasm between these two generations. FIFA confirmed it would open a disciplinary investigation into the post-match brawl. The images were impossible to ignore. Nahuel Molina shoving Rodri, Leandro Paredes grabbing Eric Garcia by the throat and pushing Gavi to the ground, assistant coach Roberto Ayala appearing to strike Dani Olmo. It was the ugly culmination of 120 minutes of frustration from a team that couldn't find a single shot on target in regulation time. Former England goalkeeper Joe Hart condemned the behavior. "The game's done. Disgusting behavior," he said on BBC's coverage. Alan Shearer added, "There's a way to lose." Too many times we have seen that from Argentina. On the other side of the field, Spain was celebrating their second World Cup title in history. And in the middle of this madness, Lionel Messi did something extraordinary. While his teammates brawled, while his coaching staff threw punches, the Argentine captain did the one thing nobody expected. He walked away from the chaos and shook hands with every single Spanish player. Joe Hart praised this moment. He highlighted how Messi displayed dignity amid the carnage, while his teammates disgraced themselves. The stark contrast wasn't just on the pitch. It was in the soul of a captain who understood what it meant to be a legend, and a generation of teammates who had forgotten. The passing of the torch wasn't just about football. It was about character. It was about grace in defeat. And when Yamal approached Messi after that handshake, the teenager wasn't just consoling the GOAT. He was embracing the only man on that pitch who still remembered how to lose with dignity. But the moment Yamal chose to walk toward Messi, he first whispered something else, something the world didn't hear until days later. In the immediate aftermath of the final whistle, as Spain's players erupted into a frenzy of celebration, Yamal didn't join them. He didn't sprint to the corner flag. He didn't collapse to his knees in ecstasy. Instead, he did something that would only deepen the mystery of that embrace. He walked away from his teammates and headed straight for the defeated legend. When they finally stood face to face, Yamal spoke first, and his words were not a celebration. "I just said to him, 'Sorry,'" Yamal later revealed. "Sorry." In the greatest moment of his young career, after defeating the greatest player to ever live, after hoisting the World Cup trophy, the first thing Lamine Yamal said to Lionel Messi was an apology. He understood the magnitude of Messi's heartbreak. He understood that this was likely the Argentines' final World Cup match, that the dream of defending the crown had ended in the most devastating way possible. The teenager, barely old enough to vote, had the emotional intelligence to feel empathy for the man he had just beaten. And Messi's response? He didn't accept the apology. He didn't wallow in self-pity. Instead, the Argentine captain congratulated Yamal on the victory and praised the teenager's performance throughout the tournament. In that moment, the man who had just lost everything showed the world why he is the greatest, not just in talent, but in grace. The embrace that followed wasn't just a passing of the torch. It was a father figure blessing a son he had never raised, a legend reassuring the boy who had just ended his dream that everything was going to be okay. Yamal would later say that if someone had told him years ago he'd lift the World Cup after facing Messi in the final, he would have thought they were crazy. But the madness was real, and in that madness, a 19-year-old had the presence of mind to apologize to the man he had just defeated.